I have my late husband's pocket watch sitting on my kitchen table right now, and I am looking at it the way you look at something you almost lost forever, with the particular terror of a near miss still fresh in your chest. Because 3 weeks ago, my daughter-in-law held it up at my grandson's graduation party, turned it over once like it was a piece of junk she'd found at a yard sale, and set it on the edge of the gift table where it tipped off into the trash bag underneath. She didn't even look down. She was already talking to someone else. And my son, my 34-year-old son who wore that watch to his prom, who begged his father to let him hold it as a little boy. My son stood 6 feet away and said absolutely nothing. That night he called me. His voice was the voice of a man who had just done the math on his own silence and didn't like the answer. "Mom," he said, "was there something inside the watch case?" I sat down at the kitchen table. I put my hand on the watch and I said very quietly, "Why do you ask, honey? Welcome to Brave Mom Stories. I'm Gloria Voss. I'm 63 years old, and I spent 31 years married to the most quietly methodical man I have ever known. His name was Raymond, and Raymond believed in 2 things above everything else: doing a job right the first time and planning so far ahead that the people he loved would never feel the ground shift under them. Raymond passed 18 months before my grandson's graduation. Pancreatic cancer, which is the kind that doesn't give you much warning and doesn't give you much time. We had 14 weeks from diagnosis to the day I sat alone in a hospital room listening to the quiet where his breathing had been. 14 weeks is enough time to say what matters. Raymond used every day of it. I want to tell you about the watch before I tell you about the party, because the watch is the whole story. Everything else is just the frame around it. Raymond's father had given him that watch on his 18th birthday. A Waltham pocket watch, American-made, 1923, with a dented gold case and a second hand that still ran perfectly. His father had received it from his own father, who had carried it through the Depression in a front shirt pocket because he said a man who knows exactly what time it is can always find his footing. Raymond wore it to our wedding. He wore it to the hospital the day our son was born. He kept it in the breast pocket of his good coat every single Sunday. About a week before Raymond died, when we both knew, he asked me to bring him the watch from the dresser drawer. I did. He held it for a long time without opening it. Then he opened it, looked at the face, closed it again, and held it out to me. "There's something behind the paper dial," he said. "I put it there 6 years ago when Theo was born. I've been waiting for the right time to tell you." I opened the watch case the way you open something you're suddenly afraid of. Behind the paper dial, the thin sheet printed with the clock face, which lifts out on old watches like this if you know where to press, there was a folded square of paper no bigger than a matchbook. And behind the paper, pressed flat, a key. Not a house key. A small, flat, bank-style key with a number stamped on the shaft. Raymond told me it was the key to a safe deposit box at First Federal on Maple Street, which we'd had for 20 years, which I had completely forgotten existed because Raymond handled those things the way he handled everything. Quietly and completely. Inside the box, he told me, was a sealed envelope addressed to our grandson Theodore in Raymond's handwriting. To be opened when you graduate. On the envelope, taped to the outside, a second, smaller envelope containing a certified check. He told me the amount. I'm not going to make you wait the way the family had to, because I've been in that audience myself, and the waiting is its own kind of unkind. It was $42,000. Saved across 12 years in a secondary account Raymond had opened when Theo was born, adding to it the way other men add to a golf handicap, steadily, patiently, without making noise about it. "It's for his start," Raymond said. "Not for a car, not for a vacation. For the moment he needs to take a real step and doesn't have the ground under him yet." He squeezed my hand. "Don't just hand him a check at a party," he said. "Too easy to spend and forget where it came from. Put the key back in the watch. Give him the watch at graduation. Make him find it himself. Make him have to look. Make him have to look." That was nearly the last clear request my husband ever made me. I have kept it in the center of my chest every day since. So I kept the key behind the dial. I polished the watch case. I wrote out a card in my own handwriting, explaining what he'd find when he opened it and why his grandfather had left it there. I put the card in a small wooden box with a hinged lid that Raymond had made in his workshop 20 years ago. The kind of plain, solid thing he made with his hands on weekends when other men watched football. And I planned how it would go. Theo would open the box, find the watch and the card, and I would be standing there to say, "Open the case, baby. Look behind the dial." I had it all arranged in my mind so clearly. The way you arrange things when the person who should be there to see it isn't going to be there. I should tell you about my daughter-in-law, because she isn't a monster, and I want to be fair to her even now. Her name is Priya, and she grew up in a family that worked hard and wanted badly to be seen as having arrived. Her parents came to this country with almost nothing and built something real, and somewhere in the building the evidence of having built it, the house, the car, the brand, became the language they used to measure success. Priya is not a cruel woman. She is a performative one. There is a difference, and the difference matters, even when the damage is the same. Priya curates everything. Their home looks like a magazine. Their son's birthday parties are planned 6 months out and photographed professionally. She is not lazy, and she is not stupid. She is a woman who has been taught, down to her bones, that the way a thing looks is the way a thing is. And that teaching is the most stubborn kind there is because it comes wrapped in love. Her parents wanted her to be proud of herself, and this is what pride looked like to them. What Priya cannot do, and I say this not with contempt, but with a grief I've carried for 3 years, is recognize value that doesn't announce itself. She looks at a thing, and she reads the surface. The plain wooden box, the dented gold watch case, the card in an old woman's loopy cursive. These things do not register as significant. They register as small. She was about to learn how wrong that register was. She just didn't know it yet. And I should tell you about my son, because the hardest part of everything that followed was not Priya. It was him. My son's name is Warren. He is 34 years old, and he has his father's jaw and his grandfather's stubbornness, and, for most of his adult life, his own particular gift for choosing the path of least friction. Warren is not spineless. That's not quite the word. He loves his father. Loved his father, with a depth that surprised me sometimes. He kept Raymond's fishing tackle in the garage for 2 years after the funeral and couldn't make himself move it. He cried at the grave, alone, on Raymond's birthday, and told me about it only because I asked. But Warren has always managed his marriage by absorbing. When Priya wanted things a certain way, Warren smoothed. When the gap between what his family expected and what Priya's family valued widened, Warren stood in the middle and tried not to let either side feel the distance. It is exhausting work, that kind of diplomacy, and it costs a man something he can't always name. It had cost Warren. I'd watched it happen slowly, the way a hillside loses soil. You don't notice until something gives. At the graduation party, something gave. The party was at a rented event space downtown, because Priya believed in marking things properly, and a high school graduation with honors was a thing worth marking. I agreed with that. I came with my wooden box on the passenger seat beside me, the same way I always left the passenger seat half empty now out of habit, and I talked to Raymond a little on the drive, over the way I do when I have something to tell him. "Big day," I said. "Theo's graduating. You should see him, Ray. He looks exactly like you did at 18, and he has absolutely no idea." The space was full of Priya's family's friends, their daughter's friends, caterers, a balloon installation, a banner with Theo's full name and graduation year in custom script. Beautiful. I mean that without sarcasm. It was genuinely beautiful. Priya does these things with real talent. I found my seat near the edge of the family section, and I set my box on the table. And an older woman from Priya's mother's side of things looked at it with polite curiosity and then looked away. I didn't mind. I knew what was inside it. Warren found me about 20 minutes in, gave me a hug that lasted a second longer than usual, and said, "Mom, how are you holding up?" "Better than I expected," I said honestly. "He looks so much like your dad today." Warren's face did something complicated. He nodded once and moved away to manage something. He was good at managing things. It was the standing still that cost him. The gift opening came after dinner, which is not traditional for graduation parties, but Priya likes a structure, and I understand that. Theo sat at a table, with his parents flanking him, and worked through the gifts. Envelopes of money from relatives, an expensive watch from Priya's parents, a Movado, very handsome, brand new, in a black leather box that announced its own quality clearly, a set of luggage, a laptop. Each one received, acknowledged, set aside. Then Priya reached for my wooden box. I watched her assess it in the moment before she handed it to Theo. I know that assessment now the way I know my own face in a mirror. Her hand held it just slightly away from her body. Not quite distaste, but evaluation. Something plain, something old-fashioned. "From Grandma Gloria," she said, and her voice was warm in the way that voice is warm when the warmth is being performed rather than felt. Theo took the box and smiled at me genuinely. Theo has always been a genuinely warm boy, and started to lift the lid. What happened next was not dramatic in the way you might imagine. There was no single cruel statement. There was something almost worse, a casual redirect. Before Theo had the lid fully open, Priya reached over, touched his arm, and said to the table, "We'll do the sentimental ones after. Let's keep the energy up." She took the box gently from his hands. He let her, because at 18 you do not yet know what costs you, and she set it on the edge of the gift table. The gift table was against the wall. A large trash bag had been tied to one of the legs to catch wrapping paper and ribbon. The box was set near the edge of the table by a woman who was already looking at the next thing, already talking about the Movado watch, already turning the room back toward the bright and the branded, and the box tipped. I did not see it tip. I heard it, a small knock of wood on floor, and looked over to see the box against the side of the trash bag, half inside it, the lid having come open enough that the card had slid out and lay face down on the tile. And Priya's eyes went to it for exactly 1 second. She registered it. She looked around at the room, which was laughing at something Warren had said. And she reached down, picked up the card, not to read it, to tidy, and tucked it back in the box, folded the box closed, and dropped it fully into the trash bag so the table edge would be clean. Not malice. Housekeeping. That might be the most devastating part. Warren had seen the last part of it. He was 10 feet away. His mouth opened. He looked at me, and then someone spoke to him, and he turned and answered. I sat with that for a moment. The watch. The key. Raymond's letter to his grandson. Raymond's 12 years of quiet planning. The account opened when Theo was 6 days old. All of it in a wooden box in a party trash bag next to torn wrapping paper and ribbon. I stood up, walked to the table, reached into the trash bag, and took the box out. I brushed nothing off it because nothing had gotten on it, which told me it had only just gone in. I tucked it under my arm. I found Theo across the room and I said, "Sweetheart, I'm going to hold on to your gift for tonight. I'll get it to you properly." Theo looked at me with the mild confusion of a teenager at a party. "Oh, yeah. Of course, Grandma. Are you okay?" "Perfectly fine," I said. "Congratulations, baby. Your grandfather would be so proud of you." I went back to my seat, put the box in my handbag, and finished my coffee. I said goodbye to the people I knew, congratulated Theo again at the door, and drove home. I cried in the parking garage, which is where I seem to do most of my crying these days. Some intermediate space between where I've been and where I'm going, where nobody needs anything from me. I held the box in both hands on my steering wheel, and I talked to Raymond. I told him what had happened. I told him I had it, that it was safe, that Theo would still get it, and then underneath the grief, something clarified, a long, cold, becoming certain feeling. Raymond had said to make the boy find it, make him have to look. He had not said hand it to him at a party managed by someone who would use it to take out the trash. I drove home and I called my friend Dorothy, who has known me since 1991 and who has a lawyer's bluntness without the lawyer's bill. I told her everything. "So the watch is safe," she said. "The watch is on my kitchen table, and the check is in the deposit box where Priya can't reach it." "Correct." "Then slow down," Dorothy said. "Think like Raymond." Think like Raymond. I stood in my kitchen, and I thought like Raymond. Raymond, who opened a savings account when his grandson was 6 days old and told nobody. Raymond, who hid a key behind a clock face and waited 6 years to mention it. Raymond, who said that a man who knows exactly what time it is can always find his footing. I didn't call Warren that night. I let him call me because I knew he would, and because the call would tell me what I needed to know about who he was choosing to be. He called at 9:47. I know because I looked at the clock. Mom. A pause. Mom, I need to ask you something. Go ahead. The box, Dorothy said. I heard. Was there something important in the watch? In the watch case itself? He'd heard from Dorothy, which meant he'd been asking around, which meant he already knew the box had gone into the trash, and he'd been trying to understand what he'd let happen. Good. Let him carry it a while. There's a key behind the dial, I said, and a card explaining what it opens. Silence. Warren, I know, he said. His voice had the weight of a man who has understood something about himself that he cannot ununderstand. Mom, I saw her put the box down. I didn't see it fall. But I saw her. I saw it go into the bag and I thought, I'll deal with it in a minute. I kept telling myself I'd get to it. And then someone spoke to you. And then someone spoke to me. A long breath, and I turned around. I let the silence be what it was. Some silences are the whole lesson. Is it gone? He finally asked. The check, Dad's account, is it? The box is on my kitchen table, I said. The key is inside the case. The deposit box at First Federal is untouched. Your father's letter to Theo is sealed exactly as he left it. I heard him exhale the way a person exhales when they have been holding their breath for hours without knowing it. Thank God, he said. Mom, I'm so sorry. I know you are, I said. We'll talk properly. Not tonight. I waited 2 weeks before I arranged the dinner, because 2 weeks is long enough for shame to settle into something a person can sit with, and short enough that nobody can pretend the event didn't happen. I made pot roast, Raymond's recipe, which I still make from memory because some things you absorb through 30 years of watching someone do it right. I invited Warren, Priya, Theo, and Dorothy, who I wanted as a witness, and who is good at saying difficult things in the voice of a woman who is simply stating facts. They came on a Sunday. Priya brought a bottle of wine, which told me she was nervous. Warren held the door for his mother, which told me he had been thinking. Theo was a teenager, which meant he had no idea what was happening, and was primarily concerned with what was for dinner. I fed them first. Raymond's pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans from the garden. I have found that it is nearly impossible to be fully defensive at a well-made meal. Something about salt and heat and real food disarms people. By the time the plates were cleared, the table had the feeling of a place where honest things could happen. I went to the bedroom and came back with the wooden box and set it in the center of the table. Priya went very still. Theo, I said, I owe you a proper graduation gift from your grandfather. I want to give it to you the way he asked me to. I opened the box and took out the watch and laid it in front of my grandson. Theo picked it up carefully, the way young people handle old things when they understand they're being trusted. It was his father's, I said, and his father's father's before that. Your grandfather carried it every Sunday for 30 years. Open the case. Theo opened it. He looked at the face. He looked at me. There's something behind the paper dial, I said. Press gently at the 3 o'clock edge. He did it the way Raymond taught me to do it 20 years ago, and the paper dial lifted, and the folded square of paper and the little flat key came loose into his palm. He looked up at me with an expression I will not forget. Not quite understanding yet, but knowing that it was real. I read the card aloud because Raymond had asked me to, and because I wanted every person at that table to hear it. I won't tell you every word. It was private the way those things are private. But Raymond had written, or rather, I had written as he told me, in the hospital in the last week, that the money wasn't the point. The point was that somebody had been thinking about Theo since the day he was born. That worth wasn't always announced. That the most important things he would ever have in his life would probably not come in a black leather box, and he should learn to recognize them anyway. He wrote that the watch had kept time through a depression and 2 wars and 30 years of Raymond's own life, and it could keep Theo's time too if he took care of it, and that if Theo ever felt like he was standing at the beginning of something hard without enough underneath him, The key in his hand was worth $42,000 in a trust administered through First Federal, accessible when he turned 21, for whatever beginning needed beginning. My voice broke once, near the end. I let it break and kept reading. Some things are supposed to cost you. When I looked up, Theo had tears running down his face without seeming to notice them, the way teenagers cry when they're caught off guard by something real. Dorothy had her eyes on the tablecloth. Warren had his hand pressed flat over his mouth. Priya was looking at the watch, not at the check amount, not at me, at the watch. She was looking at it the way you look at something when you have just recalibrated everything you thought you knew about it. I turned to her. I kept my voice the same temperature it had been all evening, warm and without performance. "You didn't know what it was," I said. "I understand that. Raymond hid it well, and I didn't tell you, and that was part of honoring his wishes. But I want to be honest with you, because I think you deserve honesty more than you deserve comfort." She looked at me. "You made a decision in that room," I said. "When the box fell, you picked it up, and you had one moment where you could have set it back on the table, or handed it to Warren, or asked Theo if he wanted it. Instead, you put it in the trash bag because it was tidier, because a plain wooden box didn't fit the picture you were making." She started to speak. I raised one hand, not harshly, just to hold the space. "I'm not saying you're a bad person. I am saying that you have been taught that the value of a thing is something you can read at a glance. And that teaching has cost your son something real tonight. Not the money is handled, but the moment. The right moment. The one Raymond spent 6 years arranging, where Theo would find his grandfather's voice and his grandfather's gift together in front of the people who loved him. That moment is gone because a plain box looked like clutter." Priya's jaw was tight. I could see her fighting the instinct to defend. "I'm not asking you to apologize to me," I said. "I'm asking you to sit with the fact that value and appearance are not the same thing. Because that boy is going to grow up watching you, and what you teach him about what matters is what he'll know." The table was very quiet. It was Warren who spoke first. He said Priya's name, just her name. And in it was everything he had been swallowing for 3 years. The smoothing, the absorbing, the choosing easier. She looked at him. He looked back. "She's right," he said. "And I stood against that wall and let it happen. So I'm not putting this on you alone. But she's right. That's the moment I'll carry. Not the money, not the watch, not the letter. That moment. My son using his father's plain, precise way of saying an uncomfortable thing and meaning every word of it." I told them what I'd arranged because they needed to know the shape of it. The $42,000 sits in an education trust at First Federal, administered independently, accessible to Theo at 21 with documentation of how it's used. School, a business start, a down payment on something real, not a vacation, not a lease on something designed to look a certain way. Raymond had been specific, and I had been specific, and the bank officer named Patricia who'd helped me set it up had been very specific, because some wishes deserve to be locked. Warren and Priya cannot touch it. I cannot touch it. It is Theo's and only Theo's, the way Raymond intended from the start. The watch goes home with Theo tonight, I told them, because Theo had held it like it was already his, careful and serious, and a little odd, and I trusted those hands. "The letter stays in the trust file until he's 21, I said. "He'll read it when he can really read it. When he stood somewhere hard and needed to know someone was thinking of him before he even existed." Theo looked at me across the table. He's 18 and not yet grown into knowing what things mean, but he's a boy who pays attention. "Grandma," he said, "can I keep the box too?" I laughed. It surprised me. The kind of real laugh that comes up from somewhere you didn't expect. "That box," I said, "your grandfather made with his hands in 1987 when your dad was 2 years old." "Yes, you can keep the box. Here is what came after, because I know you want to know. Priya and I are not easy together. We are probably never going to be easy together, and I have made my peace with that. But she came to my house 3 Sundays later, alone, without calling first, which is entirely unlike her, and she sat at my kitchen table and she said something I did not expect. She said, "I called my mother after the dinner. I told her what happened, and my mother said, "Well, how were you supposed to know?" And I realized, that's exactly what I would have said. That's the first thing I would have said. And I don't want to be someone whose first answer is always that someone else should have done more to help me see it. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was a woman looking at a pattern she'd inherited and deciding she might not want to keep it. That's more than a lot of people manage. Warren is different. I don't mean dramatically. I mean in the way that quality materials change after they've been through heat. He still smooths, he still manages. But there's a line in him now that wasn't there before, or maybe was always there and had been buried. At Christmas he told Priya, in front of her family, that he wanted Theo to hear the story of Raymond's watch someday, the whole story, and that he was going to be the one to tell it. Priya looked at him for a long moment, and then she said, "Okay." And that was all. And it was enough. Theo wears the watch on Sundays. He texted me a photo of it 2 weeks after the dinner. Just the watch on his wrist, natural light, no filter, no caption, just the watch. I looked at that photo for a long time. It has the same dent in the case that it had when Raymond's father gave it to him. That dent has outlasted everyone who knew how it got there, and now it's on an 18-year-old boy's wrist on a Sunday, in a world Raymond never saw. Time pays forward. That's what I've been thinking about since. Not interest, forward. Every careful, patient, quiet thing we put into the people we love pays forward, into a future we won't be alive to see. Raymond knew that. He spent 12 years proving it, $10 at a time, in an account nobody knew existed. The watch is on my kitchen table right now, because Theo left it here last Sunday when he stayed for dinner. He'll come pick it up. He always does. And every time I see it sitting there, I think about a plain wooden box that almost ended up in a party trash bag, and about a man who believed that the most important things don't announce themselves, and about the lesson that is worth more than $42,000. That a thing's value has never once been printed on its case. Learn to look past the surface. Whatever you love, put it somewhere it has to be found. And never mistake a thing's appearance for its worth. That's what Raymond left us. That's what I'm leaving you. If you still have something handmade, something plain, something that doesn't look like much but carries someone's whole heart inside it, keep it. And if someone in your life needs to hear this story, send it to them. Drop a comment and tell me about the plainest, most precious thing you own. I read everyone, and I'll see you next time.